Hello, friends. Hope you are doing fine. Today, we are going to talk about the expansive territorial policy of modern time era superpower China. Look at a modern world map. The border seems permanent, etched in stone. But in Asia, boundaries are moving quietly, forcefully. Over the last 2 decades, China has engaged in one of the most ambitious territorial expansion in modern history. But it is not using traditional full warfare. Instead, Beijing uses a sophisticated playbook. It combines island building, economic leverage, and what experts call grey zone warfare. How is one nation redrawing the map of Asia right under world's nose? And why is it doing it now? Let's break it down. Our first stop is South China Sea. This body of water carries one third of global shipping. It holds billions of dollars in oil and gas, as China claims nearly all of it. In 2016, an international tribunal ruled that China's historical claims had no legal basis. Beijing simply ignored the ruling. Instead, they built artificial islands. They literally poured concrete over coral reefs, turning them into unsinkable aircraft carriers. But how do you control a sea without starting a war? You use grey zone tactics. This means action that are aggressive but just below the line of provoking a military response. China deploys its massive coast guards and maritime militias, which are essentially weaponizing fishing fleets to bully neighbors like the Philippines and Vietnam. They ram boats, they block resupply missions, they wear the opponent down until they give up. Now, travel thousands of miles inland to the freezing height of Himalayas. Here, China shares massive, poorly defined border with India known as the Line of Actual Control or LAC. While the world was distracted by global events, Beijing quietly built a massive network of military infrastructure here: heliports, radar stations, and missile bases. They are also building Zhaokang or well-off village directly inside disputed territories, including areas claimed by Bhutan. By placing civilians in these remote valleys, Beijing creates a fact on the ground. It becomes nearly impossible for neighbors to claim the land without looking like the aggressor. It is salami slicing tactics at its finest, taking small unnoticeable bites of territory until whole valley is yours. But expansion isn't just about soldiers and ships. Sometimes it's about money. Welcome to the checkbook conquest. Through its Belt and Road Initiative, China offers billions of dollars in loan to developing nations for massive infrastructure projects. But there is a catch. The interest rates are often high and the terms are secretive. When countries like Sri Lanka or Laos cannot pay the debt back, Beijing steps in with a solution: lease us the asset. Sri Lanka had to hand over the strategic Hambantota port on a 99-year lease. Laos lost control of its national electricity grid. China didn't fire a single bullet, yet it gained strategic control over vital regional hubs. Beijing's strategy has been highly effective, but it is creating a massive backlash across Asia. Nations are waking up. Countries like Japan, India, and Philippines are boosting their military budgets. They are forming new counter alliances like Quad and AUKUS to draw a hard line against further expansion. The map of Asia is being rewritten every day, not through grand treaties, but through slow calculated game of chess. The question is no longer what China wants, but how far its neighbor and rest of the world will let them go. China shares land border with 14 sovereign countries, tying with Russia for the highest number of land neighbors in the world. Geographically include Mongolia, which has China's longest land border. Russia, split into eastern and western segments around Mongolia. North Korea, located along the northeastern edge. Kazakhstan, which borders the northwestern Xinjiang region. Kazakhstan borders China far west edge. Afghanistan connects via narrow remote Wakhan corridor. Pakistan is connected via high altitude Khunjira Pass. India separated primarily along the line of actual control. Nepal, home to Mount Everest along the shared border wall. Bhutan, a small Himalayan kingdom on the southern border. Myanmar shares tropical jungle frontier. Laos, located in the center of Indo-Chinese Peninsula. Vietnam, situated along the southeastern coast. Being very ancient civilization, Chinese civilization has grown up in its own ethnic way. This ethnic way has molded the China ideologically and structurally. With the rise of communalism, China has tendency of growing its landmass with the help of its expansive territorial policy. China has not even left one of the superpower Russia on the front of land border dispute. The 1969 war between Russia and China occurred when ideological differences and contested river island ownership erupted into fierce, undeclared military conflict along Usuri River. The battle over Jinbao, Damansky Island, brought the Soviet Union and China to the brink of nuclear war before a diplomatic freeze took over. China's behavior with its neighboring country is defined by dual strategy of economic integration and assertive territorial expansionism. While Beijing uses trade and infrastructure loans to bind neighbor to its economy, it simultaneously employs military and grey zone tactics to enforce contested land and maritime borders. China asserts historical ownership over in nearly the entire South China Sea using its self-proclaimed ninth dash line, which directly overlaps with the exclusive economic zones of several nations. The Chinese coast guards and maritime militia frequently deploy water cannons, blockades, and ramming tactics against civilians and military vessels from Philippines, Vietnam, and Malaysia. Beijing has built and militarized artificial islands in the Spratly and parcel chains, equipping them with runways, missile batteries, and radar system to project power. Bilateral insistence of China refuses to settle maritime disputes through international law, rejecting a landmark 2016 International Tribunal ruling and insisting on loop-sided bilateral negotiations with individual Southeast Asian nations. Relations with India remain deeply strained due to the unresolved 3,488-kilometer line of actual control. Despite periodic minor diplomatic thaws to regulate patrolling, both nations maintain heavy military deployments following deadly clashes in eastern Ladakh. China is actively constructing a massive network of dual-use border villages, heliports, and Himalayan railway lines near the Indian border to dramatically accelerate troop mobilization speeds. Through projects like New China Myanmar Bangladesh Transport Corridor, Beijing seeks to systematically expand its strategic infrastructure footprint around India's geographic periphery. Beijing utilizes a mix of border incursions and settlement buildings inside Bhutanese territory to pressure the nation into establishing formal diplomatic ties and conceding strategic land. Through the multi-billion-dollar Belt and Road Initiative, China finances massive infrastructure projects in developing neighbors like Pakistan, Laos, Myanmar, and Sri Lanka. When target nations struggle to repay high interest Chinese loans, Beijing leverages the debt to secure long-term leases on strategic assets such as deep water ports and railway lines, expanding its military footprint. China's behavior has split its neighbor into two distinct camps. One, which has states like India, Japan, and Philippines, and Vietnam, which are building strong internal defense capabilities and deepening security pacts with the United States. The second one are the neighbors like Malaysia and Brunei pursuing muted purely economic diplomacy to avoid retaliation. Beijing aggressively condemns regional security coalitions like Quad, which include US, India, Japan, and Australia, and AUKUS, framing them as hostile, Western-led containment strategies aimed at restricting China's rightful rise. China's behavior with its neighboring countries is defined by a dual strategy of economic integration and assertive territorial expansionism. While Beijing uses trade and infrastructure loans to bind neighbors to its economy, it simultaneously employs military coercion and grey zone tactics to enforce contested land and maritime borders. China asserts historical ownership over nearly the entire South China Sea using its self-proclaimed ninth dash line, which directly overlaps with the exclusive economic zone of several nations. The Chinese Coast Guard and maritime militia frequently deploy water cannon blockades and ramming tactics against civilian and military vessels from Philippines, Vietnam, and Malaysia. Beijing has built and militarized artificial islands in the Spratly and parcel chains, equipping them with runway, missile batteries, and radars to project power. China refuses to settle maritime disputes through international law, rejecting a landmark 2016 International Tribunal ruling and insisting on loop sided bilateral negotiation with individual Southeast Asian nations. What do you think is the most dangerous flashpoint? Let us know in the comments below. Dear friends, if you like this work, then please share and subscribe to the channel because it is very much needed for me to be motivated and work upon many other projects like this. Thank you once again. Take very good care of yourself. Bye.